canto number 4. Chapter number 27, entitled Attack by Chandavega on the city of Puranjana. And today we're reading from text number 24. Rishabham yavananam tvam Vinay virepshitam patim Sankalpastvai bhutanam Krita kila narishyati. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Shri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Approaching the king of the Yavanas, Kalakanya addressed him as a great hero, saying, "My dear sir, you are the best of the untouchables. I am in love with you, and I want you as my husband. I know that no one is baffled if he makes friends with you." Purport. The words Yavananam Rishabham refer to the king of the Yavanas. The Sanskrit word Yavana and Malacha apply to those who do not follow the Vedic principles. According to the Vedic principles, one should rise early in the morning, take bath, chant Hare Krishna, offer Mangalarti to the deities, study Vedic literature, take prasad, and engage in dressing and decorating the deities. One must also collect money for the temple expenditures, or if one is a householder, he must go to work in accordance with the prescribed duties of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Sudra. In this way, one should live a life of spiritual understanding, and this is the way of Vedic civilization. One who does not follow all these rules and regulations is called a Yavana or a Malacha. One should not mistakenly think that these words refer to certain classes of men in other countries. There is no question of limitation according to nationalism. Whether one lives in India or outside of India, he is called a Yavana or Malacha if he does not follow the Vedic principles. One who does not actually follow the hygienic principles prescribed in the Vedic rules and regulations will be subjected to many contagious diseases. Because the students in this Krishna consciousness movement are advised to follow the Vedic principles, they naturally become hygienic. If a person is Krishna conscious, he can work like a young man, even if he is 75 or 80 years old. Thus, the daughter of Kala, time, cannot overcome a Vaishnav. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami engaged in writing Chaitanya Charitamrita when he was very old, yet he presented the most wonderful literature about the activities of Lord Chaitanya. Srila Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami began their spiritual lives at a very old age, that is, after they retired from their occupations and family lives. Yet they presented many valuable literatures for the advancement of spiritual life. This is confirmed by Srila Srinivasacharya, who praised the Goswamis in this way. Nana Shastra Vicharane Kanipuno Sadharma Sanstapako Lokanam Hitakarino Tribhuvane Manyo Sharanya Karo Radha Krishna Padaravinda Bhajana Nandena Mataliko Vande Rupa Sanatano Raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the six Goswamis, namely Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus they are honored all over the three worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. Thus Jara, the effect of old age, does not harass a devotee. This is because a devotee follows the instructions and the determination of Narad Muni. All devotees are in the disciplic succession stemming from Narad Muni because they worship the deity according to Narad Muni's direction, namely Narada Pancharatra or the Pancharatrika Vidhi. A devotee follows the principles of the Pancharatrika Vidhi as well as the Bhagavat Vidhi. Bhagavat Vidhi includes preaching work, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, the hearing and chanting of the glories of Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Pancharatrika Vidhi includes Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmani Vedanam. Because a devotee rigidly follows the instructions of Narad Muni, he has no fear of old age, disease or death. Apparently a devotee may grow old, but he is not subjected to the symptoms of defeat experienced by a common man in old age. Consequently, old age does not make a devotee fearful of death, as a common man is fearful of death. When Jara or old age takes shelter of a devotee, Kalakanya diminishes the devotee's fear. A devotee knows that after death, he is going back home, back to Godhead. Therefore, he has no fear of death. Thus, instead of depressing a devotee, advanced age helps him become fearless and thus happy. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Jnanatirmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swabadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvidam Dam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanda Radha Kanda Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Srila Prabhupada ki. When Chandavega attacked the city of Puranjan, Chandavega, as we know, represents time. So then the daughter of time, Kalakanya, old age, was looking for someone to marry. And Narad Muni deflected Kalakanya to get married to Yavana Raj, the king of the Yavanas. And the king of the Yavanas represents fear. So fear and old age get married. And this is how a devotee deflects fear and old age from their life. Yesterday we talked about how a devotee has no fear in their life. And here today in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is talking about how old age is not an issue for a devotee at all. Not only is it not depressing for a devotee to become old, but neither is it debilitating for a devotee to become old, because on the mental platform and on the physical platform, somehow or other, by spiritual absorption, a devotee learns the art of how to transcend old age. For us, like for Vaishnava historians, the dating of things are not so important. It's not so important to get the date of things exactly right. Yet still, sometimes they reveal dates and they talk about the chronology of things because it helps us to get a deeper insight into maybe what was going on at that time. So when you look at Gaudiya history, there is always some, I would say, not so much clarity about dates, but still when we look at the dates, it helps us to get an insight into the lives of these devotees. So for example, here Srila Prabhupada is talking about Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami is talking about Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, and he's helping us to understand that their best contribution actually came in their old age. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was appeared in this world in 1486, as we know. Now the Goswamis, Rupa and Sanatan, different people give different dates, but the general consensus is that they appeared a couple of years after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Rupa Goswami appeared in maybe 1488, and Sanatan Goswami was the older in 1488, and maybe Rupa 1 year later, Rupa Goswami in 1489. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu visited Vrindavan in 1516. Remember, he took sannyas in 1510, and then he was mainly in Puri, and then after that he went to Vrindavan. On his way back from Vrindavan, he stopped at Prayag and he stopped at Varanasi. And in these two places, he instructed Rupa and Sanatan. And after instructing them, he told them to go to Vrindavan in 1516. So therefore, you can deduct from that Rupa and Sanatan, when they went to Vrindavan, they renounced everything, and when they went to Vrindavan, then they were most likely in their 30s, in their mid-30s. So they became Goswamis, renunciates, in their mid-30s. And it's then said that Rupa and Sanatan lived till about the 1560s, like that. So they lived till about 70 years old. So basically all these literatures that they wrote, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, for example, was one of the very later works of Rupa Goswami. So these books they were writing actually when they were 60, 70 years old. They were writing in their old age. Remember, at that time there was no database, there was no internet, there was no easy access. And if you look at a book like Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, then Rupa Goswami is quoting from many, many different places. And that means that his memory was incredible. Because to be able to access so many quotations from so many different places, he must have memorized so many things. So it means even at the age of 60 or 70 years old, his memory had not failed him. Usually this is one of the first things that disappears in old age. Similarly, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's situation is even more acute. If Mahaprabhu appeared in 1486, then it said that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami appeared roughly 30 years later, in 1516. And it said that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, when he left his place, Jamatpur, to go to Vrindavan, then in the early years he was spending time with Rupa and Sanatan. So if he was spending time with Rupa and Sanatan, who left the world in 1560, then that means that Kaviraj Goswami, you can deduct, was basically also renouncing and going to Vrindavan when he was about 30. And Kaviraj Goswami completed the Chaitanya Charitamrita in 1615. So that means that he was roughly 90 years old when he finished the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he even says in the CC that he was shaking and his eyesight was failing and he was not able to. And if you look at Chaitanya Charitamrita, even in the CC, he's again quoting from so many different sources, which again means he had some superhuman capacity even in his old age. So here we see the Goswamis of Vrindavan, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, these were all flourishing even in old age. Even Jagannath Das Babaji has said he was living till he was very old, and even at the age of 120, his servant Bihari would take him in a basket around everywhere. He said he was so old he couldn't open his eyes, so Bihari would have to come and forcibly lift open his But when Bhaktivinoda Thakur thought that he had found the birthplace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then he wanted to get it confirmed from Jagannath Das Babaji, and so Bihari took Jagannath Das Babaji there in the basket. And as soon as Jagannath Das Babaji arrived, they said he jumped out of the basket and he started dancing, Eto Nimai Janma Bhumi, Eto Nimai Janma Bhumi, saying this is his birthplace. So somehow he transcended that limitation. And then of course we have the example of Srila Prabhupada, who perhaps Srila Prabhupada wrote his first book. Well, in the Lilamrit it says Easy Journey to Other Planets is documented as his first book, which he wrote in 1960. So that means, how many is that? When Srila Prabhupada was 64. He wrote his first book. Actually, later on they found out that Srila Prabhupada wrote a book even before the Easy Journey to Other Planets. Anyone know what that book is? No. Gita Gan he wrote, which was poetry on the Gita, but something he wrote even before that. Back to Godhead, no, but I'm talking about a book. No. Poetry, but not book. There's a book that he wrote that actually most devotees may not have even read because it's not printed by the BBT. Later on, many years later, they went to Srila Prabhupada's Radha Damodar, and some devotees found an old manuscript of a book. And the manuscript was entitled In Search of Life's Ultimate Goal. And this is actually the first book that Srila Prabhupada wrote. It's not actually printed by the BBT because the BBT don't have rights to it. It's printed in another Gaudiya press, but you can, if you go on the internet, you can download it. This is actually Srila Prabhupada's first book. It's where he analyzes the conversation between Ramananda Rai and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Anyone read this book? Yeah, many devotees don't know about this book. So this is actually, can't say read all of Prabhupada's books now. Have to read this book. Yeah, it's called In Search of Life's Ultimate Goal, or In Search of the Ultimate Goal of Life, one of those two. And it's Srila Prabhupada's commentary on the Ramananda Samvad, the conversation between Ramananda Rai and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he said that Srila Prabhupada wrote that book in 1959. Easy Journey to Other Planets he wrote in 1960. And then of course we know Prabhupada wrote many books later on after that. In his old age he was writing tireless. There's that famous story of Prabhupada who was translating in the middle of the night, and then he was frantically ringing his bell, so the servant ran in and said, "Oh, Prabhupada, what can everything okay?" I said, "Everything's fine, but why are you sleeping?" Prabhupada he said, "Well, it's the middle of the night." Prabhupada said, "It's also the middle of the night for me, but I'm not sleeping." So the devotee said, "Yes, Prabhupada, we were out all day, making life members, and we were busy the whole day." Prabhupada said, "I was also busy the whole day." You could understand, this isn't going far, So the devotee said, "Prabhupada, you're a pure devotee." Prabhupada said, "But why are you not a pure devotee?" So he looked at Prabhupada and said, "Prabhupada, what shall I do?" Prabhupada said, "Go back to sleep." So Prabhupada was just there, tireless, like translating, transcending the limitations, only sleeping a few hours. Yes, in old age, a devotee overcomes all of this. In his old age, in Tamal Krishna Maharaj's diary, actually, he writes interaction he had with Prabhupada, and he said, Prabhupada said to him in the final days, Prabhupada said, "In my life, I never mated and I never defended. And now in old age, neither can I eat and neither can I sleep." That practically now in old age, I've overcome all of these propensities completely. So this is what actually happens to those who become very, very advanced, that they conquer over old age, they conquer over eating, sleeping, they conquer over all physical limitation. In the Sadgoswami Astakam is mentioned like that. Nidra hara vaharaka divijito chatyanta dino chayo. They had conquered over nidra, sleeping, and they had conquered over ahar, eating. So this is very, very powerful. The devotees are able to have this kind of fearlessness and immunity to the things that otherwise break people in this world. When old age comes, it breaks people mentally, emotionally, and it also breaks them physically. They just become completely debilitated. But for a devotee, they don't get affected in the same way. We even, sometimes I tell this story of how, they were fighting to close the manor. There was some opposition, and so we had to employ a very, very expensive lawyer. They call them QEs. And they are very, very learned. They're very, very old and wise, and they've studied all the law books. So we employed one of them to defend the temple, and before we employed him, he said, I need to know something about your philosophy. I need to know something, so I can defend you properly. So devotees were like, yeah, here, take these books, So they gave him all the books, and amongst the books they also gave him Prabhupada's Lilamrit, life story. So he came back, and Shivram Swami at that time, this is in the 90s, so he was much younger. And so Shivram Swami met him, and he said to Shivram Swami, yeah, I understand your philosophy, I got it, I've read it all. One thing I have to tell you, your founder is amazing. And Shivram Swami said, yeah, we know, that's why we joined. And he said, no, you don't know. He said, no, we also read the same book that you just read. He said, no, you don't understand. This man is amazing. I said, really? So the man said, how old are you? So Shivram Swami said, whatever, at that time, 40 years old or something. He said, I am 70 years old. I know what it feels like to be 70 years old. And to do what this man has done at the age of 70 is extraordinary. So I humbly submit to you, you don't know. You don't know the glories of your own founder. Maybe when you're 70 years old and you know what it means to be in a body of that age, maybe you'll get some understanding of how incredible this is, what your founder has done. So it's like that. Srila Prabhupada writes here in the purport, if a person is Krishna conscious, he can work like a young man, even if he is 75 or 80 years old. So that's personal realization. Srila Prabhupada really was working like a young man. So yes, for a devotee, old age is welcomed. For people in the material world, Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra Maharani ki jai, Shishigonitai ki jai. For people in the material world, the younger years are the business end of life, and when old age comes, they just tolerate. But actually for devotees, it's the other way around. As life moves on, as age advances, as old age arrives, this is actually the business end of life. This is the exciting part of life. This is the part of life which really, really counts, because this is the part of life where we're coming close to death. And then, Ante Narayana Shmriti, one has to train themselves, one has to be so absorbed that in those final moments they will then be able to remember Krishna. So therefore a devotee in old age becomes more focused, becomes more infused, becomes more active, becomes more absorbed, because they realize that this is the time now when it really, really counts. I remember at the manor, we were fortunate to have the association of Mother Kalangana, And she, for 4 decades, did practically the same service. She would wake up at 2 o'clock every single morning. She would chant all her rounds, and then she would go into the kitchen and she would prepare the Mangalarti sweets for Krishna. And that was her service for many decades. And even in her old age, she continued doing that service. And many devotees told her to slow down. And she said, no, how can I slow down? How can I relax? This is the part of life which really counts. So she would be there in every Mangalarti dancing. She would be there in every japa time, even if sometimes her body couldn't allow her to stay awake. Still, she was there chanting. Oftentimes when the Bhagavatam class would go on, she would be sitting in a chair right in front of you. It's kind of intimidating. It's like there listening to the Bhagavatam. Very, very enthusiastic. Because yes, in old age, that's the time when you have to really focus. That's the time when you have to really take it serious. Because how will you remember Krishna if we're not absorbed? So yes, old age actually brings many, many gifts. In old age, you can be more focused in Krishna consciousness because so many duties have now gone, disappeared. Everyone's moved on in their life. Everyone you had responsibilities towards, they've moved on. So in old age, you have now the space. Duties have gone. In old age, you have the opportunity because desires have also gone. You've seen it all in the material world. You've tried it all. Everything has happened, and now you realize there was nothing there. Now let me just focus on Krishna. In old age, so many other things disappear which hold us back from Krishna. Attachments disappear, hopes disappear, so many things disappear, and therefore one can be focused. And so here we're seeing that for a devotee, there's no reason to be depressed by old age. Rather, it's the greatest opportunity. I'll just end by telling you a story. It's a folk story of someone who was on the train to Vrindavan. And on the train to Vrindavan, they had a realization. This person was old, on their way on a train to Vrindavan. They say there's only 3 reasons you should go to Vrindavan. One reason is for some inspiration. One reason is if you have some service. Or the other reason is to leave your body. So this person had realized, now the time is coming, let me just go to Vrindavan and leave my body there. So they got into the train, and as they were sitting on the seat, their wallet fell out. And as their wallet fell out, in the wallet was a picture of Krishna. And so that picture kind of fell out. And so the person next to this person picked up their wallet and saw the picture of Krishna. Said, oh, that's very nice, you're going to Vrindavan. And in your wallet there's a picture of Krishna. And it made that person think, and that person said, let me tell you the story of my wallet. Said, when I was young, my parents gave me the first installment of pocket money. Back in the days, they had pocket money. Nowadays they have debit cards. Said, and when I got my first pocket money, then my parents also gave me this wallet. And so I used to keep my pocket money in this wallet. And in that section where you have clear plastic, where you can put a photo. At that time when I was young, I put a photo of my parents. And then as I grew up and I became a teenager, my wallet began to fill up a little bit more. And then what happened is I became more and more self-conscious. So I replaced that photo and I put a photo of myself. And then as I grew up and I got a job, more and more money came into that wallet. And at that time I got married. And when I got married, naturally, I put the picture of my partner. But then what happened is I had children. And as I had children, a lot of that money started disappearing from my wallet. But my children, they may have been taking that money away from me, but happily I spent it for them because they became the center of my life, and my picture of my wife made way for the picture of my children. And so there was a picture of my children in that wallet. And then later on, my children grew up, and they got married, and they left home, and they had their own lives. And therefore, I realized, looking back on my life, all of the people, they left me. All of the people whose picture I put in the wallet, they disappeared from my life eventually. And then I realized, let me just put Krishna's picture there, because Krishna stayed with me. And when I put Krishna's picture there, then I realized, now in my old age, maybe I should just go and be with Krishna. And therefore here I am with my wallet, in which most of the money has disappeared, but I've kept the picture of Krishna. And now I will try to be with Krishna for the rest of my life, and maybe for the rest of eternity. So that is very nice that, yes, ultimately we realize we're making so many relationships here. Even Srila Prabhupada, someone mentioned Vrindavan Bhajan. Srila Prabhupada was there in Vrindavan in 1959, and he wrote this very reflective poem. And he said, where's my mother? Where's my father? Where are all my family members? All that is left of my family life is a long list of names. Everyone has abandoned me. This is misery. I sit alone in Vrindavan, and I realize, whom do I love in this Maya Samsara? Prabhupada said, this is misery, but it gives me a laugh. I sit here in Vrindavan and I laugh. So old age is like this also. In old age, one gets many, many realizations. One gets many, many insights into actually what is the nature of this world. So in this way, in today's purport, Srila Prabhupada is reminding us that for a devotee, old age is neither depressing nor debilitating, but is rather the greatest opportunity to embrace Krishna in their life. And in this way, no material condition can ever inhibit a devotee's happiness, a devotee's inner contentment, and a devotee's progressive endeavor to give their life to Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. If anyone has any questions or comments or anything you would like to clarify, we have some time. If there is. Yes.
Hare Krishna.
You have to press the bottom button.
Unten, das noch.
No, the white button.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for a wonderful lecture. Yesterday I was contemplating a bit on the topic of enthusiasm, and we can see that the one thing which is different in the old age of a Vaishnava and the normal man is actually this enthusiasm for Krishna service, and this enthusiasm kind of became the second nature of a Vaishnava. And I contemplated on my service. We were doing book distribution, and sometimes it's like you're enthusiastic if the books are going and you meet like wonderful people on the street. Then it's easy to do. Then the body is like, doesn't matter how tired you are, you're ready to do it like for hours and hours. And sometimes we just need to kind of turn on our intelligence enthusiasms, like where we are actually emotionally, we are like, come on, like, let's go to sleep. So I was just wondering if there is a way to switch from, like, to make this enthusiasm on the level of intelligence, to make it enthusiasm on the level of, like, taste, emotion, where you feel it. Yeah. Is there like a transition method?
Yeah. Well, Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that there are religion on different levels. So he says the lowest level of religion is religion which is out of bhaya or fear. Then he says higher than that is religion which is out of asha or desire, results. He says higher than that is religion which is out of kartavya or duty. And then he says higher than that is religion which is out of prema or love. And you can see that this is an incredible model actually, because you can apply this to many, many different things. And it's the same for enthusiasm. Sometimes on the lowest level, people are just enthusiastic to do something because they're scared of what will happen if they don't do it. That's like the lowest level of enthusiasm. Like if someone comes knocking on the brahmachari ashram door and says, I want to join as a monk. And you're like, why do you want to join? Because it's terrible out there. You kind of think like, okay, maybe this is not the best motivation. So I'm scared of living out there. No, that's not very good. But it's a beginning. So one type of enthusiasm is an enthusiasm which comes from fear of the ramifications of not doing that thing. Then another type of enthusiasm comes when you get some benefits or some results from that thing you're doing, and that's driving you. So when you're doing service or when you're practicing Krishna consciousness and it feels really good and all the side benefits are also coming, like power, influence, recognition, material opulence, then that brings an enthusiasm. But one must in their heart know, where is my enthusiasm actually coming from? I have to go further. And then later on there's a type of enthusiasm where whether the results are there or not, one does it out of intelligence, out of duty, out of a sense of this is going to be good for me. And then the highest type of enthusiasm is coming when one is actually captured by the person they're serving. And therefore all obstacles and all difficulties fade away, because the pain of not serving far outweighs the pain encountered in any service. And therefore, because the pain of not serving is so great, because one has love, then any pain encountered in service can never stop that person from serving, because it's much more painful not to serve. That is love. That is why Haridas Thakur could not stop chanting, even in old age when it was very, very difficult, because the pain of not chanting was outweighing any pain he was encountering in his service to Krishna. So how do we get there? How do we become captured? How do we develop a type of enthusiasm which goes beyond results, which goes beyond duty? That means that one has to become more and more captured by Krishna's personality. Therefore, along with our service, we're hearing, we're chanting, we're praying, we're coming in front of Krishna. And we're actually trying to develop some love for Krishna. We're trying to appreciate how much Krishna has done in our life. We're trying to appreciate how Krishna is arranging and assisting at every step of my life. We're trying to develop that deep gratitude for Krishna. And when that gratitude for Krishna is deeper and that love becomes more tangible, then naturally one will have an enthusiasm to serve more and more. So, yes, there is no way to develop that kind of pure enthusiasm apart from becoming more and more captured by Krishna's personality. And so that's what a devotee is trying to do. And of course, that is taking time to develop that kind of love, and therefore we have these safety nets of like duty and intelligence which keep us going even when our love seems very, very meager, then we still continue on like that. So sometimes they say, rather than waiting till you love someone to serve them, by serving them you will develop love for them. And so that's another dimension to our spiritual journey, that from service comes love. They say in the Vedic tradition, it's not that you marry the one you love, but you learn to love the one you marry. Because first you come together and then there's commitment, and then from that commitment love is coming. And so we also realize that this mature type of enthusiasm based on love comes from a type of enthusiasm in the beginning which is based on commitment and duty. Therefore, Vedi sadhana leads to bhava. Sadhana is that which has the potentiality of bhav. So in the beginning, that duty is important. Some thoughts? Yes.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. On one side, it's true we have to serve more and more, right? And we can never do enough, and also if we're enthusiastic, we like to serve. And sometimes I just observe that we think we're like more elevated than we are, and then we get health problems or whatever because we're just pushing ourselves too much. So how could we balance our life that it's healthy for us so we can continue doing it like that, and also get more intense and do more
How to balance that? Yeah, so the classic example would be someone who goes to the gym. Generally, they assign you a trainer, a personal trainer, because our tendency is either to do too less or to do too much. That is basically, most people in this world are either suffering from the mode of ignorance or they're suffering from the mode of passion. Therefore, when Srila Prabhupada arrived in America, he said, Rajastama guna era sabaya achan. That most of the population here is absorbed in ignorance or passion. So ignorance means the tendency to just do as minimum as possible, and passion means the tendency to overexert and try to get quick results. So similarly, when someone goes to a gym, there's the tendency to either just do so less and stay in the comfort zone, or there's the tendency to do too much and then injure yourself. Mark Zuckerberg said something interesting. He said, most people underestimate what they can do in 1 year. They overestimate what they can do in 1 year, and they underestimate what they can do in 10. That's because we have the mode of passion. We want to get everything done, and then we overestimate what we can do in a year. But then what we do is we underestimate what we can do in 10, because we don't have a long-term vision that if I do this in a steady way, then how much I can achieve in 10 years' time. So therefore, it's always good to have a personal trainer, because they can tell you how to bend yourself without breaking yourself. They can teach you how to come out of the comfort zone into the creative zone without then eventually ending up in the crisis zone. So that's an art, and therefore guidance is really, really important, to have people who can give you that feedback. But then also we just have to be observant of ourselves. You know your endeavor is becoming over-endeavor when it's adversely affecting you on a physical level, an emotional level, a social level, in relationships. Then you can understand, maybe I'm doing more than I can manage at this stage. So yes, keep a steadiness, Srila Prabhupada uses this word, which is very nice. He uses the word steadfast, which I think is a nice word because I don't know the etymology of it, but to me it sounds like being steady and also improving and progressing and moving forward. So that seems to be like the golden kind of illumination for a devotee, that be steady and then gradually increase the intensity in a sustainable way. So yes, we have to be intense. Divrena bhakti yogena yajeta purusham param, the Bhagavatam says, only by intense devotional service can one ultimately purify their consciousness. So find an intensity that suits you and is sustainable. Okay? Yes.
Hare Krishna. Need to press this thing.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for very practical and inspiring lecture. And I wanted to ask a question about this balance in family life, where I have a lot of responsibilities and I have a big family and a lot of seva. Also, I'm trying my best to serve here in the temple. And for example, like 5 years ago, somebody told me, "Oh, you should write a book about how to build a relationship in the right way, or you should, I don't know, give these lectures." But now I'm realizing that I don't have time to write a book. So how should I find like 15 minutes a day and to write at least something? Or should I wait when I will get 60 and then I will have more time to write a book and preach like more globally? Or
Yeah. So your question is specifically about writing books, or just generally devotional service when you're busy, or is it specifically you're asking about writing?
But this is also devotional service,
Yeah.
right? To preach
To write,
to
yes.
society, and
Oh yeah, 100%.
I feel that Krishna had this plan for me, but he has his plan. But now I'm realizing that I don't have a time because I have a lot of responsibility with the family.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just say two things about time generally that I can say I've experienced in my life. I think every devotee has problems with time, enough time. But my strong conviction is that two magical things happen if you don't waste time. If someone can look at their life and go in front of Krishna and say, "Krishna, you see, you're in my heart. I didn't waste any time today." If you can go in front of Krishna and say that, and you live a life in which you don't waste any time, my practical observation is that two things happen. The first thing is that Krishna starts opening up windows of time for you, like without you even trying. You'll see certain things will happen, like say for example you have some kind of duty and then someone just comes along and says, "You know what, don't worry, I'll do that," and you find out, "Oh my God, I've got this time available." The first thing that happens when you don't waste time is Krishna starts opening up all these new windows of time. And the second thing that I've experienced when you don't waste time is Krishna gives this kind of magical empowerment for you to do what would normally take 2 hours in like 1 hour. Somehow or other you just become super effective. And you realize, my God, that was so quick, that was so easy, now I've got all this time. So Krishna wants you to be used as an instrument. Yeah. And when someone becomes an instrument in Krishna's hands without having any ego and, with a sincere desire to serve, why will Krishna not empower you? Of course he will. But it means that from our side we have to become a good instrument. No resistance, no separate agenda. So the first thing, as I would say, for everyone who's lacking in time, just try to live a life in which there's no wastage of time and see the magic happen. Things will happen. I feel it will happen. And then the second thing is, when there's a service and you don't have time for it, like should you wait or should you do a little bit now? Yeah, do a little bit now. It makes a difference. Writing takes time. One devotee writer said to me, writing is PIP. I said, what do you mean? He said, perspiration, inspiration, perspiration. It's just like hard work. Like when you write, it's not that you're just going to sit down and write a masterpiece in one go. For 90% of the time when you're writing, you're putting the words on the paper and you're thinking, this is rubbish. This is not substantial. Nothing is coming out. I thought I had so much to share. There's nothing here. I'm so shallow. I'm so superficial. It's a lot of hard work. And then in the middle of it all, inspiration comes. It's amazing. One year I went to Vrindavan. So I thought, yes, I'm in Vrindavan, the home of the Goswamis who were writing Nana Shastra Vicharane. So here I will write this year, following in the footsteps of the Goswamis. And I tell you, for 1 month it was so difficult, like nothing, all the time in the world, in Vrindavan, with all the Shastra around you, and I was writing and it was like, oh my God, nothing is coming. And so I tell you, the amazing thing happened. By the end of the trip, nothing had happened. Something, but it was very dry. Anyway, then I got on this Air India flight. So I got on this Air India flight, and then, then the plane took off, and then I got a notebook out, and somehow or other, all these ideas kept coming to me. I was like, the whole month I was in Vrindavan, nothing came to me. Anyway, I got on this plane and I got my notebook out because some ideas came, some realization. So I started writing. I couldn't stop writing for 8 hours. I practically wrote the whole thing of what I wanted to write. I practically got the whole structure in 8 hours. And the whole month, nothing happened in Vrindavan. It's like, Krishna, you're very funny. It's amazing. So, I'm just sharing this with you. I'm not a great writer, but as someone who's tried to write something, it takes a lot of time. When you write a book, it's like going on a journey. You have no idea where it's going to end up. You just have to go on the journey. So yeah, just begin 15 minutes a day, and and things will come, realizations will come, and when Krishna sees you have a sincere desire to serve the world in that way, all opportunities will open up. So yeah, go for it. Please write.
Hare Krishna. I have also something that bothers me, has something to do with time as well. But anyway, I do a lot of services. I like to do a lot of service, makes me feel happy and so on, but very often I'm tired. I even asked my spiritual master, should I decrease? And he said, no, it's good for you because you're focused there. So I do it, but then I used to read a lot, and that's not happening at the moment, because if I take a book, I fall asleep, after one page, and I can't because I'm so tired. And then when you talk about how, these saints in our tradition, how they were focused with time and how, they remembered things. And I forgot even all that I previously knew, So sometimes it makes me frustrated because I think I'm becoming more stupid, more really. And I wanted to go for Bhakti Vibhava, and I cannot remember verses. Like they just, even if I learn them, like if you ask me the next, I will pass the test. But if you ask me the next day, I don't remember them, maybe a little bit. So I don't know. It feels like, is it mercy or I don't know? It's like you can't control this thing. Like you want to, but you can't. And I wish I could read as before, but I can't. So maybe you have some advice. Or
I have no advice. I'm suffering from the same problem. I think we're all living in so many worlds, Like we want to be active in devotional service. We want to do things for Krishna. We want to be busy. We want to have some result to show Srila Prabhupada also, like I tried to do this for your movement, here is a beautiful project, or here is something. And then at the same time, we want to read, we want to be absorbed, we want to become learned, we want to have taste for the holy name of Krishna. Then we want to spend time with devotees, we want to have good relationships, we want to, so how to figure it all in. We're living in so many worlds, how to fit it all in. I don't know. One thing is interesting, when you look at Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life, what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does is he has an external purpose for why he comes to this world, and he also has an internal purpose. So his external purpose broadly is to preach and share Krishna consciousness, and his internal purpose is to relish the Radha Bhav, the mood of Srimati Radharani. But when you look at Mahaprabhu's pastimes, it's very interesting, because basically what happens in Mahaprabhu's pastimes is that the internal and the external actually seamlessly merge. So what happens is that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu takes sannyas, for example. And why does he take sannyas? Because he wants to preach. But why does he also take sannyas? Because he wants to become vyavasayatmika buddhi, and he wants to focus, like the residents of Vrindavan were just focused on Krishna. And therefore when he takes sannyas, his Radha Bhav also intensifies. So sannyas fulfills both purposes, because by taking that thing, he actually manages to do both things. When Mahaprabhu goes to Rath Yatra, then what happens? It fulfills his external purpose, because in Rath Yatra the whole world comes there, so he can preach to the whole world in one place at Jagannath Puri Rath Yatra. But then what does he do in front of the Jagannath cart? He's looking at Jagannath and he's remembering Srimati Radharani at Kurukshetra, who was experiencing deep separation from Krishna. So therefore he's experiencing and fulfilling his internal purpose and his external purpose at Jagannath Puri Rath Yatra simultaneously. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes to South India, he goes to preach, where there's the crocodiles of many different philosophies. But then what does he do while preaching in South India? He meets Ramananda Rai, and he has very deep conversations in which he relishes the mood of Srimati Radharani. So when he travels to South India, he does both simultaneously. So there's a sense in which when we become expert in our life, then the internal and the external aspects of our life seamlessly integrate. It seems to me that when Srila Prabhupada, like Srila Prabhupada said, when I write, my Bhaktivedanta purports are like my personal ecstasy. So here is Srila Prabhupada writing, which is his service for the world, but at the same time, it's as serving the world, he's having a deep inner relishment when he's doing that, which means he's internally absorbed and externally contributing. So I think there comes a life that we have to try and find where our internal relish and our external contribution are going hand in hand and are feeding and supporting each other. So it's not like, oh, I've done so much service that I'm so tired that I can't read now. But rather it's, I've done so much service and got this mercy, and now when I go to read, I feel like I'm getting so many realizations. That's how it should actually work. I felt like that on Sankirtan because for many years we were traveling, maybe for 12, 13 years, up and down the country doing traveling book distribution. And I would read in the morning, and then we would go out for Sankirtan, and then I would read in the evening. And I always felt that although I was more refreshed when I was reading in the morning, because you're naturally more fresh, my reading in the evening brought more realizations, because I felt like I had gone out and I had done some seva or tried, and then drew some mercy. So in the evening when I was coming back to the books, even though physically I was more tired, spiritually I was coming to the books with mercy. And therefore I felt like I was able to get more from my reading in the evening than even the morning, because there was some mercy behind it. So I feel that eventually it should become like that, that our external service empowers us for inner connection. And I'll just say one final thing on this, that one devotee said to me that changed my perception. He said, it's good to be absorbed in service, but do you know that it's also a service to be absorbed? So that really, when I heard that, it really changed the way I began looking at things, and said, yeah, it's good to be absorbed in service, but it's also a service to be absorbed in Krishna, because we have to find absorption. Otherwise, where are we? Where is our Krishna consciousness heading? You know, we need to have the capacity to be absorbed. How much capacity do we have to be able to stay with transcendental vibration of Hari Katha and Hari Kirtan? How much can you stay there and just be in that vibration without having the need to go anywhere else? That kind of absorption needs to be built. So I think there's here, and then Krishna Prema. I guess I will try to finish. I don't want to hold everyone too long, so maybe we'll end in a few minutes.
I have a question from the lecture yesterday, is it okay?
Yeah, sure.
You were talking about the different kinds of fear, how to overcome them, and of course today again the fear of death, which is also present. But my fear, actually right now, or actually when I look back the whole life, my biggest fear is the loss of independence. Is there something maybe you can say how I can overcome this kind of fear?
The loss of independence?
Mm-hmm.
Can you say what you mean by that?
Well, yes, actually I can. For a while I've been in the process of looking out for a guru, for a spiritual master, and I have one in mind, and well, he says this thing that accepting a guru means give up your independence.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's more material independence, and yeah, it's something I really hang on to. So this kind of keeps me from accepting a spiritual master. This is one of my biggest fears. So I was wondering if you have some advice on this.
Yeah, great question. Well, you get to the root of the psychology of a conditioned soul. We came to the material world because we wanted to be independent. So that spirit of independence is very, very strong. So the first thing, as I would say, try to understand whether there are any blocks to taking shelter of authority. Like try to look at it the other way. Like on one side you have a spirit to be independent. But sometimes that spirit to be independent stems or is rooted in a fear of authority. So sometimes what happens is that the spirit of independence is coming because we've had bad experiences with authority figures in our life. And therefore the idea of giving up our independence to someone else is a very scary idea. That can sometimes be very strong within us, like we are holding on to psychological blocks to authority or to any kind of person overseeing us in that way. So that might be something to explore if someone has a very, very strong spirit of independence. But one thing I would say is that the Bhagavatam, when it talks about the Guru, it talks about the Guru in a different way. It's a very famous verse. Brahmachari Gurukule Vasandanta Guroritam Acharan Dasavanicho Guru Sudrida Saurida. In this verse, where it's actually talking about a brahmachari who lives in the Gurukul, but it's talking about Guru-disciple dynamics. And in that last line of that verse, it said Guru Sudrida Saurida. So actually the Guru is the best friend. So although the Guru in one sense becomes your ultimate authority, you become the property of your Guru, you can see that in a very heavy way, or you can actually see that in the most natural and loving way. Because what happens is when you develop a relationship of love with someone, then there's nothing better than being completely under their shelter. It's like you've become controlled by their love. And therefore that idea of being their property is not forced or it's not, imposed, but it comes naturally from relationship. And so I think in order to overcome the fear of independence, the first thing is I would just say is see whether there's any blocks that are blocking me from wanting to take shelter of an authority. And then the second thing is just develop relationship. Because in relationship, that fear of having that kind of, someone having that kind of control over your life, it will diminish. Because you want that person to control your life because you have complete faith in them.